Hello and welcome to Complementary Colors. I'm joined here today by Kara Rude.
Hey everyone.
And our guest Ashley Killian.
Hi.
And Ashley comes from us from the FF&E world. Ashley, what does FF&E mean?
You don't know?
Well, refresh my memory.
About half our clients probably have no clue. That we're like,
I think that's a very common question.
I know. Like, what does she do?
What
does she have? No, I'm sorry. So FF&E is furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Oh, that's exciting.
I once heard someone say if you turn a building upside down, anything that doesn't fall out is considered FF&E. So I was like, oh, that's a good way to put it.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a really easy way.
I like to say it's the frosting of the structural cake. You know, it's the part you really like. It's really the part you talk about.
It's the part you use.
It's the fondant. It's the candles. It's the decoration. Anyway,
it is the candle.
But it's how you move in the space. You can have a beautiful building, but if you don't have, the right things in there to function how you want it to,
it is your tool.
Yeah,
that is very true. And I think that the interior design profession, it gets a little muddied sometimes. And when we really have a lot of legs and we have a lot of arms. We touch a lot of things as interior designers, from everything from the finish selections that are, it's typical for someone to think, color, paint, and decor. The little mini accessories and pillows and things like that. Programming and space planning, though, that's probably a bigger portion of what interior design does on top of interior architecture. So it's kind of like a blend of being everything inside of those exterior walls is kind of our domain. And so FF&E, furniture, is a big one for what we do, and it plays into so many of those arms, from the finishes to the space plan, the program, all of that FF&E touches. So I think that being how we're asked that question so many times from our clients, that I think it's a good one to talk about today, don't you think?
I agree. I agree.
Right. So let's deep dive into it. So furniture types and placements really give us a tool for connection. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
I would. Yeah. I think it's what everyone remembers about a space.
And it's your first impression. Mm-hmm. And you walk in and you're going to see.
Look at that sofa. Or, look at that sofa.
Or was that an uncomfortable sit? Do you know how many times we use that in the industry? Yeah. What is the sit like?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah. And it also, I think, is really cool that it also can connect people inside. Like, of course, your first impression from your clients and those that are walking into the space for the first time. But what about the people that are walking in every single day, right? What it does to them, to impact them and their culture and their belonging, and how we can connect people by the furniture. I think that's kind of a really cool thing that you get to do, Ashley, all the time. It's really think about how this department needs to function next to this department, who needs to be available, who needs to have the sight lines, who needs to have the acoustic privacy. It all comes down to those, like you had said previously.
The details.
The devil is in the details.
Yep.
Exactly. So I'm going to give you another pop quiz. Ready for it?
Let's go.
So Steelcase is a manufacturer that we use often, and they have a really great research department, and they just published a new quick article on their well-being section that basically highlighted the top 3 priorities that workers, so those that are inside the building working, have indicated that they feel are important. What do you think those top 3 are?
Ergonomics.
Okay, what else?
Choice and control.
Okay, what else?
It's like thermal and lighting are tied. So in my mind,
it's too cold.
I would say I'm going to go thermal comfort over lighting control. Yeah, thermal comfort.
You guys are diving deep. What about like a top umbrella that would capture those things?
Drawing a blank here.
Yeah, girl, go ahead.
Okay, well, this study has shown that 81% of people think that employee well-being is the most important thing to them.
Duh. I mean,
right?
I'm sorry. I mean, that's the whole.
Course.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
So 81%.
Okay.
But a very close second, 78%, talked about sustainability.
Interesting.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know, right?
I love that people are like, I will be completely uncomfortable my whole entire life as long as, I
It's
mean,
good for the environment.
I think that also
kudos.
shows how kudos to the education and how it's showing us what we can do better, right? Sustainability. And then the close third, so 76, so we're going 81, 78, 76% said DEI, which is a cool acronym for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is one of the first times that it's actually made the top 3.
I didn't know it was an
Really?
acronym too.
Yeah.
Another acronym.
There we go. DEI.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for the first time it's made the top 3.
I guess I'm a little in shock that it's for the first time, but
I know.
Okay.
So when we say diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want to make sure everybody understands what we mean by that, and especially in the furniture world. So by definition, it describes policies and programs that promote the representation and participation of different groups of individuals. So we have a really big opportunity to make an impact in our furniture world on this topic. So it's kind of great to see that, well-being, yes, we can definitely hit that. Sustainability, we're moving in the right direction. But this one, that's a big one. That's intimidating.
Yeah, and I guess like my mind goes to neurodiversity. I'm sorry. I don't know what is with me today. It's like coming back, this sickness.
All good.
I'm sorry. But I don't want to have like a weird
weird voice.
I mean, it's always kind of raspy, but okay. No, but I am a little shocked that neurodiversity wasn't more specified.
I think it falls in that category because
so
it's
It's
age,
inclusive, right?
It's race, it's ethnicities, disability, gender, religion, all of that plays into the
neurodiversity.
Exactly.
And I think that that's just a little bit more poignant when it comes to what furniture affects. Is how you psychologically feel in your situation with FF&E.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also when we talk about this DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I am going to say DEI because it is a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. No, I know why it's an acronym.
We have the ability to connect the team. We have the ability to connect the team to the leadership or CEO with really important moves, as long as we can educate those that are buying the FF&E package, the why, because it is not cheap. It's not cheap at all, but it affects the bottom line more than a lot of things do. You can have 5 different colors of paint in this space, but if you don't have the right tools, it doesn't matter what
function
color
in
it
the
is.
space the right way,
Exactly.
then what good is that?
Exactly. So I think that those top 3 were kind of like a really nice way of framing 2023 and what we're doing post-COVID, because I think that before COVID, it was a lot different because we didn't have as much. We had work from home, but we did not have it the way that we have it now. And I think that has made a huge impact on furniture. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What have you seen the most change in?
I think there's just a lot more flexibility that's needed in so many different avenues, from where you work in the office to where you work at home. Having that flexibility to choose where you're working to get your work done, it's important, I think, for the well-being of the employees. So it's
almost to blur the boundary.
Yeah, that's a
and
good
I
point,
think
yeah.
that even the phrase hospitality, I feel like is about to phase out, because it used to be something that like was the gray space between residential and commercial.
Yeah. Now we're really blending the residential and commercial.
So the blend between those things, there's been a whole industry for it, like the in-between space before Starbucks took that third place coining was our hospitality industry, which was all about how the furniture was. It's like it was that space that was still public, So it had to be contract grade because you didn't know who was going to sit in it.
Multi-use.
But then it also had to give you the feeling of home, you know, which is not as durable, and it has more of that worn in, comfortable, wabi-sabi personal feel. And so I am starting to see since COVID, that line is disappearing. You know, we are we're blending those spaces.
Right.
You know, and side topic, when you say contract grade, I think that's a really good point. That because we are blending so many things right now, that line of what to purchase and where to purchase it from is actually getting really blurred as well. And so, Ashley, do you want to explain the difference between contract grade and everything else?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. Contract grade is made to hold up for multiple use longer. You know, it's going to really not get the wear and tear like your furniture at home. It's going to fall apart, you know, a lot sooner if you were to just wear it out. The cushions, from the cushions to the fabrics. So the way it's manufactured,
And
all of that
tested,
is tested to withstand, you know, going back to BIFMA, you know, BIFMA rated furniture, compliant furniture. That's a whole other branch that the manufacturers are compliant to, or a lot of them. You want to look for those manufacturers to have the safety, the well-being, the durability, versus if you're going to, you know, Costco and getting a
IKEA.
sofa or IKEA. Yeah, that's a great one. That thing's going to fall apart. And I actually read an interesting article about furniture, even like, I'm sidetracking here from the commercial industry, but even like our furniture at home, when we were, you know, I would say 100 years ago when our relatives got furniture, it was
Passed down.
solid, and this was meant to last for basically your life. So whatever
Legacy.
furniture you had. And so now there's like so much of this, like, you know, it's got the aesthetic down, but it doesn't have the durability down. And it's
Like
just
fast fashion furniture.
it's fat. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. So we're not seeing that like we used to,
We're
but
not seeing things that can be plugged into a system of circularity.
yeah,
Because if it's going to fall apart and you don't know what to do with the parts, then it was a waste of effort.
Exactly. Sorry, I had to.
Yeah,
I was like,
no.
oh, that's a really good one to distinguish, especially with our lines being blurred the way that we are, because we're not just having an impact on in person anymore. We're having an impact for those that are in the building and those that are interacting with those that are working virtually.
Right.
And we have an in-office virtual, but also I thought it was really cool. Miller Knoll also has a really great research department, a lot of cool white papers. They coined another one that was abstract connection. I'm going to read you this definition because I was like, oh, this is cool. So abstract connections are the relationships to ideas, beliefs, values, or goals. That's like the mission and vision of a company, which is very cool. And these connections can be just as impactful as the in-person and virtual because you're building your community with everything that's around you, not just the tool, but how the tool functions, how the tool looks, how it fits
It's
into
your personal brand.
It's your personal brand, exactly. It's who you are. So you get to be something that you want it to be. So I think that when we look at science and we look at how sociology has throughout the years explained to us that we have things called strong ties and weak ties, we're not as good at doing those right now because we're trying to figure out how to blend home and work right now. And they're finding that environments are kind of losing some of the purpose and the flexibility because we are maybe not spending the whole day there, or we're only in office 3 days a week and we decide to have our conference days at home. So now the tech is a lot different. So we're having these challenges of figuring out how to support that hybrid, which is I would say that would be the buzzword, the hybrid work culture. How do you guys feel that would be successfully done right now? Like with what tools we have currently and how we have done it. Like our office is definitely a blend of hybrid, depending on what life throws at you that day.
Right.
What have we done to help that?
I think autonomy, everyone, that's never going to be out of fashion, right? Everyone always wants a choice. But I think what we are missing, and this is going to get a little more philosophical, but I think what we are missing more so, the more we push, like, you may choose everything or anything, and you can be anything you want to be to our youth, which was not always the predominant messaging to our youth, is it's harder to find a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. And so I think when you say work from home, work from here, when you wake up on that morning and you are in that gray space and you're like, man, I don't really know what's best for me in this very moment. And I wish there was a structure right now that would make me feel like, oh, boom, if
You
I do
belong to
this
something.
thing, then all of a sudden, like, I accomplished a purpose. And it could be the simplest of things, but I think there is the disdain for routine has kind of diluted purpose in our minds and replaced it a little bit with a craving of entertainment and comfortability. And let's be honest, nobody was ever fulfilled by just being comfortable all the time.
So you eventually get bored, right?
Absolutely. And so what I'm
The
saying
novelty
is,
wears
like,
off.
if we're sitting here saying work from everywhere, do whatever you want to do all the time, you would have to be a very established soul to understand what you need at all times.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
a great point.
I think if we were going to solve anything with the tools that we had now, just to bring it back, it would be to give a little bit more of a framework to especially our younger, very specifically our younger employees, so that they would have something to come up against. Because when you overcome a challenge, whether it's working out or accomplishing like a deadline, you get a sense of gratification that with
Immediate,
autonomy, we are stripping away in this day and age.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think that the more we can showcase that the blend of work from home and work in the office happens, we can also showcase the fact that that is how you grow. You can interact and gain new ideas, get inspired by people. You don't do that necessarily by yourself. Like, humans are meant to be in groups of people, learning from each other, getting ideas from each other. That's just how we grow and how we collaborate. So even though we're embracing this hybrid community workflow, however you want to explain it, we still need to be able to accommodate both of them. And
Absolutely.
Ashley,
I was gonna say, I
you
can
worked
vouch
from
for that.
home for what, a year and a half?
So more than that.
Oh yeah, with that.
Yeah. So to 2018, I moved out of Alaska and started remote work in 2018. And it, while it has its, pros of the, you don't have a commute, there's
Time back.
time back. It also, that lack of structure you're talking about, Kara, and lack of, Melissa, what you're saying, interaction. I definitely missed that. So I always was starved for attention, or not attention, but starved for human interaction when I come
Absolutely.
into the workplace. And then it's like, for me personally, working from home, it's like you kind of lose your social skills a little bit. It's like, how do I interact with people in the world? I don't know. So it's important to have that, go into the office, be collaborative, bounce those ideas off. Or even for me now, moving back and being here full time, I'm like, I understand so much more of the projects, what's going on from start to finish. Whereas when you're working remote, you need to over communicate and then some, because
That's a
otherwise
great
you're
point.
not getting the big picture of what's going on.
You see the whole life cycle,
Right.
whether you want to or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. You just can't replace the energy too that you get from being in the presence of other humans. So
And I think that's really important to stress too with the whole DEI inclusion part of the I. If we can't interact, then that already is suffering. And so we're not strengthening those ties that those sociologists are telling us are important for a collaboration and a team to function. They should have strong ties. So if we can't figure out a way for those, we
Underserved
tried to
voices.
fly you. Yeah.
yeah, it's we've come a long way with technology and video conferencing. Obviously, that's very helpful, but it's not the full picture.
Yeah.
Right. And those underserved voices and opinions and perspectives, I think being able to insert those helps you remember what the community we're serving, is really made up of.
Yeah. There was even, so this week, we had an in-office meeting for the first time with our design team. And I think one person showed up because it was like, you can join remotely or we'll be in person. And it was just kind of interesting to see, since COVID wiped all of the in-person meetings out for so long, how hard it's been to get that in-person meeting back. And it was really interesting when we did have, like, there's one other meeting where like, we'll wait for you to get here. And then they get there and we're like sketching, we're drawing on the board. We're really, like, they left with markups that were color-coded. And I didn't have to do anything after the meeting. It was a working meeting, and it was so refreshing.
You accomplished so much more in person.
You got it done in that hour instead of capturing the information you needed to do in that hour to follow up.
Right.
So there is really great benefits from connecting in person again. But also, if you can't, having the technology and the furniture to allow those people to have an equal voice at the table. And not just this like spotty cell phone because we can't get you connected or where's our IT guy? Like what happened? All of those mishaps that can happen. If we can streamline that in furniture and make it easier with all of our equipment that we have in the FF&E part.
Flexibility in furniture.
Yes, the flexibility. It's going to be way more easy to get that DEI solution. But also we have sustainability, right? That was another really big one that people were talking about. So I think that we've come pretty far. But how do you guys feel like we're doing furniture-wise and sustainability?
I can go first. I think, I spoke to this in another podcast, but bring back to BIFMA and level certification. I think that there is one voice that unifies kind of the common goals of the furniture manufacturers, the contract furniture. And so they're working together to, not only for the present time, what we're in now, but also for the future. So they're kind of trying to forward think like and respond to our industry and the sustainability that we're all asking for now. I think there's good movement on kind of tracking that, from cradle to grave. Where is this material coming from? There's, standards that they're measuring for these furniture manufacturers. So we're coming a long way, but there's that, not to say that there's not work to be done.
I know. And that's like almost the behind the curtain, right? We're doing like the specification writing for the furniture that you want. We're making sure it hits all of these BIFMA and level certifications to make sure that your warranty is going to actually last and what you're investing in is going to actually sustain. And then there's a whole nother front curtain. Carrie, do you want to talk about?
Well, I feel like I need to play devil's advocate a little bit here because I have a very strong opposition to what I just heard. But I would say that
this is good.
Again, back to my drum of circularity and my drum of reuse, that if there is, let's say, 100 pieces of furniture that have been manufactured 20 years ago, the exact same way that you are manufacturing them today, and those are sitting unused in some unnamed location, that those should be reclaimed and reused instead of taking virgin material and recreating those all over again. And there's a huge gap in the furniture world.
And I don't think a lot of people know that. I think it's one of those things that we are finding in our design world currently where there is that gap because we're learning more about that circularity and how impactful it is on the carbon footprint and all of the science is coming up. So I think it's really great to bring that up, Kara.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because if you think about it, if the bones are the same and we're just changing the fabrics and the powder coat finish or whatever finish, I'm using like partition and demountable systems as an example, and panels, is that I would say that we should stop all new manufacturing of these things. Like if there was going to be somebody in the furniture world that was largely named that would stand for that, that they would get so much play. It would be such a reinvention because we're all in the same big blue world together trying to make it survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their manufacturing has not changed in 20 years. Like there's enough. There's enough there.
I would say that the manufacturing that has changed to make it more economical and affordable. So that's where almost like that fast fashion furniture comes in. And that's what I'm hearing. You're like, hey, we need to kind of mute that and
More
really
so,
go
like
back
it's still
to where
made
it
out
was.
of like steel and aluminum, and it's still made extremely like the contract grade we've mentioned before.
Yeah.
It's still made in that same fashion, but maybe we should invest less in the manufacturing on new and more in a MRF, you know,
Repurposing.
like a facility that's like a material, you know, reclaiming facility and resorting facility.
And don't you have a company that you found that has started to?
So anyone that loves Marketplace or, you know, any of the other ways that we create residential circular economies. Yes, Reaply is a company that does that for our industry. So
It's more of the commercial grade products.
yes, and so whether it's FF&E or building materials, you can go and find things and shop on already created products that are stored around. But then I also think it's important diversion, you know, like these MRFs I mentioned, these material recovery facilities. I met a company.
Another acronym.
That's a good one.
I didn't know that one.
I met a company just at that last sustainability summit, IRS Demo. They're out of California. And, you know, instead of being a demolition contractor, they are a deconstruction contractor.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And then they put, you know, for example, they'll, you know, decommission an entire commercial kitchen and they're like, this is all usable.
Right.
And so they'll just put, you know, an ad, like we have this and
That's
people will
great.
come and they will collect it instead of that sitting in a landfill. Never, you know, it's again, I can't say it enough. Like trash is not a term used in nature because everything is circular. And we have implanted ourselves on top of this ecosystem and said that if we bury it and don't see it, then it's not a thing. But again, if we kind of bring this back to every part of our industry, there's always going to be a new home.
Yeah, and I think furniture is a really great place to start actually investing in that circularity because we have the ability to refresh products without having to replace them.
Could that play into the equity too? Or-
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I,
It's not going to be
On
as
all levels.
expensive as buying something new. So, you know, you can put that out to organizations that might not have as much funding. So, yeah, give it a
or
new
even
life.
donations.
yeah.
Right? Donate it to a nonprofit and it
Right.
gets a new life and new legs.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So the next one was well-being, which was the top selection, which I thought was very interesting after COVID, was employee well-being. So I think that plays back to like the Well Building Institute and their standards that they've activated in all of their sections. And some of them being as specific as active furnishings and choice and control. Ashley, what does active furnishings mean?
So that would be something that you can be active in. So like a height adjustable desk. I think that circles back to the study about being seated all day or seated in front of a screen all day. And they're learning that is not good for your health. It affects, it can increase your risk for getting cancer.
It's like seating
weight
is the
gain.
new smoking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
that's right.
the new
That's my
tagline.
point.
Sitting's the new smoking. Creates fatigue, back pain. So just sitting there all day, like you're gonna,
You'll shorten all your ligaments.
yeah. And if you don't have a good ergonomic chair, some chairs do support you sitting, but that's still neither here nor there. It's not good for your health. So active furnishings will help you to move throughout the space. So height adjustable desks where you can go to standing. There's some furniture that has like a treadmill attached or
really active.
cycling. And then even just like getting one of those little like pedal things for under your
I've
desk.
also seen, I think we have a coworker that has one of those standing boards too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
circulate
Around
that
there.
around.
Yeah. That's really interesting as well. Just to get your your brain circulating a little bit more, even if you're in a stagnant mode of focus. It's still making something move. Which I
Well, you
thought
can
was really
follow the
interesting.
3 W's too. You
Ah,
told
yeah.
me about this?
What are the 3 W's, Ashley?
So me and my oldest son, we listen to Daily J on the app Calm, and so it's kind of a fun way for us to close the day and kind of bond together. And it's always great information.
Yeah.
But he had a really good one that I liked, and it was the 3 W's. So when you're working during the day, if first thing you need water, you need to hydrate yourself. I think I know I personally always need more water.
I can improve that too.
Yeah, that needs improvement. The second thing was window. So go to a window, get some fresh air, give your eyes a break from looking at the screen. And then the third thing was walk. So even just like going down the hall and touching the little model we have of the airport and coming back into the hall. Yeah. But just getting up and walking. So those 3 things, help with your well-being during the day, the workplace. Even if you don't have these ergonomic tools, there's things that you can do to mitigate that.
I like that you bring that up too. The walking, it's really important to change your situation sometimes and your perspective. And having the choice and control over your space, which is another subcategory of the Well Building Institute and the framework that they have. But it gives you the opportunity to not just do your work in one spot. It allows you to work in the cafe if there's one there. You can take a walking meeting around a track in your office or outside. You could do a flex space and have standing meetings somewhere. It really allows you to choose that. How do you think furniture plays a role in supporting that?
Well, I think the design in general, during the design development process, going through and making sure that you're designing spaces for maybe a quick huddle room meeting space, designing a private office, maybe that could also double as a meeting space if the person working there isn't there all the time. Having a cafe, kind of like the Starbucks, what we talked about.
The third space.
Having something like that, even you could go and plop down and work, or having kind of a residential feeling lounge space, that makes you feel more like home and like you're.
You just chill for a little bit.
Do you think, because I'm just thinking about some of our client meetings, and I just want to make sure that our listener is just sitting there thinking like, I wish my clients were up for some of these flexible spaces.
Me
And
too.
Yeah, we do too.
but I guess I think that it's really important to talk about how there's an education component when it comes to these areas. And, I think that's a huge part of what your job always is as much as, building systems change, FF&E changes so much quicker. And that rapid change makes education a huge part of your job in order to show people that this is actually beneficial. Because when it comes to programming, most people equate higher ups with,
Corner
like
offices.
I mean, that has been shown even in cinema. Like if you have the corner office, you're important. And so to try to break down some of these social boundaries that we've created within an industry that people will say openly they don't know enough about or much about, but yet they have very stringent ideas based on cinema or personal experience or social norms. And so you are always up against such a hurdle.
Yeah, and inside of the
Especially
design community.
Anchorage.
It's not just educating our clients, you're educating us too, right? Because you just said that some of these things need to be programmed. That's 35% of the building design, not FF&E.
Right.
It
Yeah.
starts at the very beginning.
It does.
So,
The conversation. Yep, absolutely.
so the more we can start learning about these things and our innate drive to do certain things, like Kara, do you want to describe this, our prospect and refuge that we like to educate our clients on?
Oh, absolutely. So it's me back to the primal. So, in our primal beings, we like to have a prospect, which is imagine hunting and you're looking at a vast, desert, or you're looking at a vast field and you're looking out at game to hunt. You can survey from a distance and you can take in all that information without feeling enclosed yourself. And that is something that brings us comfort. And you pair that with refuge, which is having your own personal boundary within that. So the way we're attracted to a booth seat rather than a table in the middle of a restaurant, or how a cave feels very
Cozy.
secure, or how the edge of a forest looking onto a field even makes animals feel more secure.
Safe.
All of those things are ways that psychologically we create space with FF&E that, attracts us to a sense of comfort and peace.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it really shows the depth and breadth that we can offer our clients with FF&E. It doesn't have to be all the same chair. It doesn't have to be all the same table. The layouts can move, right? So if you've
Flexibility.
you've got a situation where you want a conference room or a training room, or just be an active flex space, and it can be in multiple zones.
Right.
I think that we're trying to showcase how we can be as flexible as possible in our, I would say like probably 65%. We're trying to show that, right? So that it's before they like, yeah, I'm going to buy that. We're
Right.
trying to show them how many times and how many ways that they can use that, which I think is really interesting. And I think that with our world today being hybrid, do you think that there is a better way to do furniture?
That's a good question.
Yeah, like just I know we have the circularity and the upcycling. I know we have that, but then let's make it even smaller. In Anchorage, Alaska, tiny little place on the map. What right now could we do better?
Man, that just brings me back to reusing furniture.
I agree
keep going back to
completely.
that because we are our own little like ecosystem up here in some ways. So if we can kind of give back to our community and pull from those materials that we already have, that would save a lot with like just getting furniture up here. You have to go on the barge and it's a couple extra weeks to get things up here. So yeah, really qualifying the dealers too up here to let us know when there's all these extra things that we are going to go out to the landfill, or maybe we can auction them off, and
That's a good point. And then the money it has another life, and the money can be used.
right.
But also, Kara, I remember you educating a client. I am forgetting the client, but I'm sure you remember. But it was a client in the bush that we call remote Alaska, where we can't get to on a road system, and I can only get there by plane or barge. About the importance of buying something of quality so that it can have a full life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I've seen, 70, 50-year-old facilities, when they're dismantled in a community, they're not buried. They are repurposed in homes. And so that toxicity or, the ability to dismantle them became way more important. So very much about the reuse cycle. But to your other question, I think that this is something that we all aspire to, is to think more holistically about the experience when you are in a space. For example, all of your senses. And it can go back as primally as when you're sitting around a fire. Anyone is willing to sit on a log as long as it's the closest seat to the warmth. And so if we think about
It can be uncomfortable as long as it's warm.
Absolutely. So I guess when we are designing space, or when people are, trying to get the most bang for a buck, if you could think about that holistic picture, knowing that
Future generations.
thermal comfort or olfactory or access to light, all of these things, it's not just about the sit, and it's not just about even the sustainability attributes. It's a piece of the puzzle of the broader experience. Then, I think we would make do. Like, I'm the person that would sit on even the wet log to get closer to the fire. So I think just keeping that in mind as you go forth with design, that you could end up being really profound, even as a young designer. If you just look at a picture more broad than your own scope, you'll have a lot more to add to the story.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and I think that The Miller Knoll pieces that I was reading earlier really honed in on the fact that a lot of this has to do with being okay to change, because change is hard.
So hard
It is hard.
for humans.
We're good at it. We're good at change, but it's still hard. And they had 3 bullet points that I wanted to summarize for you guys, because I thought they were really good, and I was like, I can't say that better. So I'll let you know what they are. So one of them was, change can feel disruptive and cause uncertainty, but it also holds enormous potential to drive organizational success. And I think that resonated a lot, especially with what you were talking about with media and how like all these movies have portrayed those corner offices and even just exterior window offices, right? And then everybody, the worker bees, are in the center. Just flipping that around and saying, well, actually, it needs to be the opposite to satisfy all of these things that you're asking
That
for.
DIE.
DEI.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, so-
including everybody and giving everybody access to those things is important.
Yeah. The next one was, a workplace that can adapt to the needs of individuals, teams, and the organization helps people get more comfortable with change, which also then builds resiliency within the company. So I thought that was really interesting too, because if we provide standing height desks, so if we go to the individual level and we're saying, okay, you get to choose when you want to stand and when you want to sit. You get to choose how you adjust your chair. You get to choose where you want to take that meeting. That's giving choice and control, where they can almost select their prospect or refuge, right? We're giving them all of that option. So that is building the trust and resiliency that they have within that organization. And then in turn, has the same trust back, because those leadership are seeing the engagement, the
I'm going to
productivity.
say that's a segue
It's a
to
circle.
the engagement.
Yeah.
There's a study on that, Steelcase did, about choice and control. The people who had more choice and control were more engaged in their workplace and their work.
I love that.
So that was interesting. But there is, I did want to mention too that you don't want too much choice and control because then you have decision fatigue. And so there's kind of like
Dude, our first world is real heavy over here. Like, I'm sorry.
but it's, you have a Goldilocks,
Yeah.
of not too much, not too little, just right. So
Yeah.
that's where we come in, is to kind of like narrow down those decisions to, our educated guesses.
I would agree, though.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. Even a site walk we've done recently where someone was like, this chair's just too high. And we're looking at it and we're like, oh, that's technically a stool at the lowest setting
Right.
with a foot ring, but definitely wasn't made for all day sit. So it's like, yeah, that education part is very important on all levels. Not just the person that's buying the furniture, but those that are actually
The end
sitting in it.
user.
Yes, the end user. Exactly. So the last one was, optimizing workplace flexibility is also an ever-changing process. That doesn't surprise me. By practicing inclusive design, organizations continue to learn and adapt based on people's changing needs. And I think this one speaks really loud post-COVID, don't you think?
Absolutely.
What we needed before COVID is definitely not what we need now.
It changed us all in so many different ways.
Yes, even with those that have continued to keep their 6-foot bubbles, and those that want them to disappear. That's a really big change in the work environment too. It's kind of hard still to gauge
That's
that.
psychological safety.
Exactly. So I think that's really interesting how flexibility it had always been a buzzword. Collaborative, flexible. What was that? Active. There was like we went on a tour, remember, at Steelcase
Active
at the
learning.
Grand Rapids? Active something. Oh no.
I'm zero help to you right now.
Man,
I'm sorry.
but it was being able to take like a desk and move it 90 degrees and interact with the team in a little different manner to do a project that's a different type.
I guess I'm thinking about how the playfulness, as we start to blend, like I wanted to be comfortable, like I'm sitting in my living room, but I'm also in my office. There's also just this layer of personal versus professional psychologically, that blending that has happened, that I think our spaces have allowed. For example, if we didn't have an open office layout with our furniture in our office, we wouldn't have the Nerf gun wars that we do constantly, which was a way for us to aggressively interact, even through that getting used to having, that physical boundary removed after the time of the pandemic.
So you mean you're facilitating spontaneous impromptu connections?
Oh, yeah.
That was definitely one of the tips and tricks I was going to give, was to be able to do things like that, to actually encourage people to just take that 20-second break and look at the window or make a really funny interaction.
Right.
It all matters in the end of the day. But with that, do you have any other like tips and tricks that you would give anybody looking into the furniture world of how they can better incorporate the tools they have or the tools they need? Like what might be missing and how they would figure that out?
I would say, and this is like, my dad might like cry a single tear when I say this, because he's like, she listened, is question everything.
That's a good one.
That was his biggest lesson in my entire childhood, is to question everything. And I think now that we have all of these resources and the connection that we have in our new world, that questioning everything will lead to new answers, and it will lead to us gaining from each other in diverse perspectives.
That's kind of like your why question was, ask why how many times? 20,
Yeah,
25
it
Oh my
times?
gosh, that's overwhelming.
Yeah, if any of you
gets
take our
uncomfortable.
Expand Experience workshop and I ask you why 20 times,
It might bring you to tears when you figure out your real why. But how about you, Ashley? Any tips and tricks for figuring out what you need and how the flow should really work?
Gosh, that's a great question. And my squirrel brain is like going back to the flexibility. We recently went to Germany to learn about school furniture, and something I feel like I wanted to comment on was the flexibility even within the classrooms.
That's
and
a good point.
how much the learning of our children matters now. They're so focused on test scores, but that's not really what's important. Like what these children do in the world and how they interact, and getting them to learn to love school and putting them on a good path to a career, good setup. Furniture can go back to that too, and having kids just sit and look at a teacher all day, sit still. How many little boys are wiggly? I know I have two little wiggly boys.
I get that. Yeah.
So just having that choice to flex and move and get the wiggles out, and kids are so creative. I'm also like squirreling out here again, but there was a study done about kids and being geniuses, and the older you get, the less genius that you get, and that there's only like 2% of the population at the end of growing up that are actual geniuses, but children,
Yeah.
like 98% are in the genius level. So
It's
our
incredible.
education takes that out. So
The phrase of like bringing out that inner child is
yes,
more meaningful than
yes,
just being playful.
exactly.
It's like that
beautiful.
intuitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
The prospect and refuge era of life is coming out because that's you're listening to your gut, you're looking at your surroundings, you're mimicking those that you love.
Exactly.
That's a really good point. So I think that to close, I wanted to share some of the references. I know we talk a lot of like fun facts and we nerd out a lot, but there are lots of resources out there for people to gather information. And I just want to highlight the two that I looked at today to refresh my brain was Miller Knoll's Insights. They have Knoll website for furniture, and they have Herman Miller website.
And they merged, which is
Right,
two
but
big
they
companies.
also have a Miller Knoll
Okay.
website
Yep.
that is all about the resources and references that they use to build and reference to teach us, the design community, the importance of the flexibility and all of the attributes that we get to teach our clients. But also Steelcase. Steelcase has a research tab that has so many white papers. I know we go to that a lot. That's a really big resource for us. Are there any other resources that you guys want to share?
I want to go back to BIFMA again.
BIFMA is a
they
good
have
one.
a lot of continued learning opportunities as well. There was a recent one about biophilic design, which is another big.
That was a good one.
It was a good one. Yeah.
I left inspired.
Yeah. So they have a lot of good learning material and just learning about the furniture industry in general.
Awesome.
And I would say International Well Building Institute, I look at their features all the time. So the features are the different parts that, you could implement into a building, but they will always have the science behind. And I think that hits on a very human level. And so if you really feel passionately about having something happen in one of your projects, to look at that research, it will always hit on a human level, whether you know anything about the building industry or not.
And then leans on the science, but backs it up. That's a really good point.
It's science.
It's science at the end of the day.
Got to do an incremental
There's a
quote in there.
reason. There's a reason we do things. But also, I want to thank you guys for listening today. And if you think of any other resources that we could share with the community, please reach out to us. We'd love to share more.
Bye.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Kara.
Complementary Colors is a production of MCG Explore Design, an architecture and interior design firm located in beautiful Anchorage, Alaska. If you'd like to hear more future episodes, be sure to subscribe to Complementary Colors wherever you find podcasts.